The more I age, the more I realize how powerfully meaningful the art form of music is for peace of the soul, of the poetry that can, through music, enter in everybody's soul. It does not impose, it doesn't oblige, it opens inner dimensions of humanity, of goodness, not as a weakness compared to evil, of a sense of the cosmos, like this universal language that transcends cultures, languages. It doesn't deny them, it even incorporates them. Beyond the trends, beyond the fashions, it's almost as if it's a health benefit for the soul, which makes the human feel better from within. That they choose to accept it or deny it, that they want to use it for purposes of bellicose people, like war music or entertaining music, to forget the important things or to just be a fun escapism. It does have all this capacity, as well as to make us reflect upon ourselves as a mirror of our soul. And I think that the more we open ourselves to different styles, genres, time periods of music that we like to think that we won't like, or we like to think that it's not for us, or we like to think we won't understand, not really. Perhaps, but not exactly. I myself, I'm not very objective mentioning this because I'm involved in music since I'm born. But being old now, I realize how much beyond its technique, its know-how, its knowledge, and the extensive awareness of the different aspects of it, which will never be completely known since it's so vast. So many authors have expressed themselves through the centuries and left for us the mark of their humanity for us to reflect upon, not necessarily thinking of us, but we access them, rather their work, the fruit of their imagination, daydreaming, culture, faith, exalting the need to express it through written signs, not only for practical reasons to rehearse and prepare and perform in their time, which of course was the main purpose of their own time period, but for us it becomes the daily music of our time, from last century or from 3 centuries ago. We have embarrassment of riches. So much music has different aspects to offer us for all different moments of our lives. for death, for birth, for joy, for sadness, for bitterness, for bittersweetness. There is music for all the rainbow of our souls. And it's not the soft power of ideologies through industrial music that I have in mind, though they have their place, and I think they're very needed for those for whom it brings the necessary capacity to express their anger or their resentment or their exaltation or their joy or their desire to exist as a generation, as a, as a group of people, as an identity of their culture. But because it's industrially formatted and commercially organized, it becomes naturally a trend. Of course, all trends pass, and every classical music of the past is also a former trend. Of course, the access to classical music today is way more universal than it used to be. The recorded, the streamed, the video, it's on a click of a finger, available, not explained, just there. And if you don't know what to expect, how to choose, what to define, you could think, it's not for me. Like science, like another form of art, where you could say, visual art doesn't talk to me, I prefer music, or it's like people saying, I prefer watching or practicing a specific sport rather than another, because you have acquired tastes. And I believe very much in acquired tastes that add to the natural intuition of our DNA, of our cultural beings from where we come and where we go in life, geographically and in time. That's why I believe so much that music, perhaps naively, perhaps utopically, could be the ultimate link between humans when corporate interests, greed brings them to, or entices them very cleverly, alas, to destroy each other. So in fact, when wars pass, the victims are forgotten and wars come again. Through history, it's an incessant suite, each being the last. So much sufferance cannot take more when self-inflicted by humans compared to natural disasters of the planet. I think that beyond trying to do well one's own deed, composing a piece, interpreting a piece, teaching the piece, bringing the meaning of the poetry in the piece without to impose it, just offer it, contributes perhaps in very insignificant dosages to reach the inner goodness in each of us, regardless of how competitive the world is, and it is, and how unforgiving the world is, and it is, professionally, economically, socially, and how organized ignorance from education to consumption is there to erase the critical thinking of each human being. And classical music, more than other art forms, brings a lot of thinking by oneself, of oneself. Introspective listeners, not only reactive listeners to a rhythm, a pulse, or a lyric. It's also a moment. Would it be a 3-minute song, a 30-minute symphony, a 2 hours opera, or the excerpts of, that plunges you in universes of imagination that you can construct with yourself innerly by your own imagination, just like when you read literature on your own and you imagine something perhaps way more exciting than the series on TV adapted from it or the video games interactively built from it, which give you a ready to consume imaginations of the essence of the storytelling, which is in the written word or in the written note of music. Of course, everybody doesn't read music like they supposed to read letters. And everybody doesn't understand what they read in letters or in music at its fullest. It depends what they read and how complex are the different layers of suggestive meanings beyond and behind the words or between the words and between the notes. What is in the 3D background that is there to be known, and how do you access it but by acquiring a culture by curiosity? You want to know more about this Romantic era, you want to know more about this Baroque era, you want to know more. And why do you want to know? Because you love hearing it, not because you're imposed, obliged. Well, you could if you take classes and you have to go through a drill, but ultimately one only develops a kinship with anything from a foreign language to a scientific knowledge to languages of foreign countries or dead languages, and is because it's meaningful to us, it's pleasing to us, because we find a purpose in it and a pleasure from it, and we suffer through it, and we drill through it in the rabbit hole that is forever going into the niche of each detail, and we realize the more we dig that the more it's infinite and the more we can give up. So much the universality of knowledge is impossible unless you stick on the surface of things, and if you go in depth, then you realize you have to specialize in the knowledge of a know-how, of a system, of a scientific style. If you want to learn the distance of planets and the movement of planets, if you want to understand the microorganism in the body that generate cancer, if you want to understand the meaning of a modulation in Schubert because you love by hearing it, because it makes you feel cold and warm or bitter and sweet or sad and happy, or you don't even, and you can't and you shouldn't try to find words to define it, since it's music is its own language anyway. But it makes you feel something. It makes you travel somewhere. It makes you realize the vulnerability and the strength of the humanity. Yes, we can destroy each other, and we can also help each other. and through art, when you visit museums all over the world, you see what humans made that is meaningful to those who want you to see it, for their country, for the region, for the culture, for the lost culture, for the discovery about specific element of science, art form, history. And mostly you see artworks, you hear artworks, you read artworks, you study artworks, because at school you learn literature even if it's obliged, if you do. But then you can, by curiosity, want to know this, like you want to know this filmmaker style, this. So of course the language, the access are limiting, I agree. And the museums represent always a choice of what is considered by the art historians as the meaningful things to be displayed when you visit a museum. That you have a vague idea of what sculpture you're seeing or what painting represents other than what you see. And if you have an art historian explaining to you for each thing the innuendos and the knowledge to have in the within the time period of each artwork, you can understand so much more than only what you can see when you're not informed. And if you don't find it interesting, you're bored. And when you're bored, you don't want to know more about it, even if very interesting things are bestowed upon you about it. So I agree that we have to develop this. And it's a curiosity, but as well as this form of acquired taste that does not come automatically or naturally. And sometimes some of the art forms, some of the scientific forms, some of the historic forms come not intuitively right away to us. We have to dig for them, and then we start realizing all these universes that can enrich our being. So I'm obviously here wanting just to make sure that you understand that I am not unaware of the cruelty of life. I am not unaware of the competitivity that leaves little time for anything that seems not practical in order to survive and to rise in society. And that culture in general seems to be that adjustment element that one can add once we have everything else. Wealth, recognition, and then we can access to see an opera, a ballet, and not find it boring, even if we do, because after all, why not? It still could be the case. I think cultivated people have a lot of critical sense, even if they have some awareness of what they criticize. And less cultivated people have prejudice because they think it's not for them. And so I find that I could hyphenate by opening my openness to you, saying there is this offering of classical music that is not necessarily a dead language. And that each music was its modernity of its time, from the 60s or the last century or centuries before. They never thought of it as not being modern, as we think we are now. But it's the modern of today. And classical music explores the modern of before and lives it in daily life. We play it, we perform it, we record it, we share it. We think that it exponentially expands the horizons of the human nature of the. In other words, the more you're read, the least prejudice you become. The more manipulated you are, the least read you are. And nobody likes to be manipulated. And nobody wants to feel like they have to be obliged to appear like they're interested in something that does not mean anything to them. They think is generational, they think is cultural, they think is basically boring. And I also thought so when I was young for so many aspects of human lives' interests. And with time, I discovered to appreciate aspects of it that I didn't know I would. And what did it bring to me? Nothing directly, as culture doesn't bring to you anything directly like food or a pay raise. It brings something that nurtures inside you, that grows in you, and that brings you to connect dots between human behaviors through times, by history and by reality of today, with how people saw the world in their own times history, and how some of the pieces of music, for instance, in this case, since I'm a musician, transcend their time period and their purpose and their depiction of their own lives. They mean something to ours. Longing, hoping, exulting, revolting, praying, hoping, dreaming, daydreaming, loving, caring, tenderness. So many nuances of the large array of the human psyche can be expressed through the tones of music. Combined, organized, singing, harmonized, dancing, praying, organized to express our inner need to express what matters to us. And I think that this is what I find very striking when I teach, play, perform, record, organize, or display music of the past, is that in fact each of the authors display the state of their understanding of the world. They don't mean it openly, but it's like a reflection of that time period. And they leave it to us, or it's for us to cherish, to study, to understand, to, to try to understand exactly how they thought of it or they wanted it, and consider that with today's ways of displaying it, we don't need to only but also do the instruments of their time, but also open to other ways through electronic dissemination, which they didn't have, of music that can reach everybody from their exercising to their praying, or anything that they do when music gives them this kind of inner engine to the soul. That's why I remain very hopeful, despite of all going on. That at my very small, minuscule level, I'm a hyphen between my teachers and my students. So that's the purpose. And that through living music that is meaningful to me, others would play it and eventually find meaning for them, just like I find in this of the composers of the past. Not because I'm considering myself at their level, of course not. I would be not a classical musician if I have such an ego. At least I don't believe that is possible to. truly. So much, the vastitude of things make us understand how fragile, vulnerable, and small we are. But individually, yes, in the chain of the history, we are a strength. And you see the importance of beauty, the importance of aesthetics for a painting, for a music piece, for a sculpture, for a film, for any art form that brings a gesture of a dancer to express the humanity. May we all benefit from the poetry of art in our lives and in our sharing. Such is my hope. Goodness is not a weakness.